Hello, everyone. It's the start of my weekend here in Colorado, and I'm so excited to be spending it with my friend and fellow poet, Erin Elizabeth Smith, who is also the executive director of Sundress Publications and the Sundress Academy for the Arts, founded in 2000. It's entirely volunteer run. It publishes chapbooks and full length works in both print and digital formats, and hosts an incredible variety of online journals for poets and writers at every phase in their writing careers. Erin is the author of three full length collections of poetry, most recently Down, and her work has appeared in Guernica, Ecotone, and Crab Orchard, among others. Smith is a distinguished lecturer in the English department at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. Welcome, Erin, and thanks for taking some time to chat with me for the Telltale Poetry Submission Interview Series.
It is a joy being here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, a pleasure to see you, even virtually, of
Yeah.
course, and to see your space, which is beautiful.
Oh yeah, they keep going too. You can do whoop.
Oh, my word, yes. That's such a great use of vertical space. That's what we all need, right?
Thank you. It was a requirement. When my partner and I moved in, I was like, I need bookshelves. So yeah.
Yes, they're lovely. They're really great. So, talking about Sundress, I mean, I'm always intrigued by how much they have going on all the time, and they have such a broad variety of programs and publications, regular readings, the Poets in Pajama series, which I love so much, as well as the workshops and the writers' retreats at Firefly Farms. Can you just tell us a little bit about the mission of Sundress and how it came to be?
Oh wow, yeah. That's it's the all the many-headed beasts, as it were. Yeah, Sundress kind of started as a lark. In 2000, I was a college dropout and living illicitly in my then boyfriend's dorm room. And it was the late 90s at this point in time, and basically, everybody was going to get rich off the internet. Spoiler alert, that did not happen. And so yeah, I started stirring first, and then basically when I was buying like domain space, the idea was like, oh, if I'm going to buy this space, I might as well give like, share it with other journals. And so Sundress kind of started as that like miscellany of magazines. So we were publishing, several different literary journals, housing several different literary journals. And it really wasn't until significantly later, we had a couple forays into chapbooks in the early aughts. And then it really wasn't until about, I think 2010 we published our first full-length print collection, and then we've kind of grown every year to the point where now we publish about 7 books a year, 6 books of poetry or full-length books print, 6 of poetry, one prose, and then we also do one e-anthology a year plus anywhere between 3 and 6 e-chapbooks, and then also our 2 to 3 craft chap series. So it's kind of one of those things where for a long time, like, either like I would have an idea or somebody else would have an idea, and we're basically like, let's just do it. So like, Poets in Pajamas was just kind of like people chatting about accessibility of reading series, or for people who could not necessarily attend in person. And now, of course, like in the Zoom landia that we live in, it seems like, oh, that's so obvious, but at that point in time there really weren't any online reading series. So that became this seems like a cool idea, who wants to do it? And so yeah, so we've had kind of a rotating number of folks who have curated. Best of the Net was the same kind of deal. It was like a conversation with a friend of mine, and it was like, we really need like an anthology that celebrates like the best work online. And so we're like, well, let's just do it then. And so it's always just been a kind of like, let's just do it then and see what happens. And all of the things, like, we started really small and have been able to grow thanks to just an incredible staff. We have over 60 people who work with Sundress, all of whom are volunteer, myself included, to make the things happen that we do. And like, that doesn't even count like all of our readers for Best of the Net, or all of our different editors for the different journals. So, all in all, we end up working with, well over 100 people every year to make everything run the way that we do. And it's, it's a testament to the amazing literary citizenship that we have in our community to do that. So yeah, so in terms of mission, I think it varies, deeply by which branch you're talking about. But we are very focused on publishing and representing and supporting traditionally underrepresented voices, particularly people of color, particularly trans and LGBTQIA folks, people with disabilities. So we are constantly trying to, build build the number of books, but also the number of individuals that we publish, as well as the amount of the residency scholarships and fellowships that we're able to offer. So it's a lot of things that we do. So yeah, and I'm happy to chat about anyone individually, but I think that's the kind of general sense. We do have the residency program here in Knoxville as well, that has been going for about 7 years. So yeah.
It's so much, and it's so well coordinated, and the consistency in which you just continue to like grow and put out amazing work and offer really just great opportunities to such a diverse group, I think is very commendable. I definitely admire, everything that you're up to. And you talked quite a bit about some of the different, arms of Sundress, right? And one of the things that I really love is that majority of your readings or your submission calls or open readings are no fee to submit to. And you have some really great literary journals that focus on specific themes. So maybe can you talk a little bit about a few of those specific ones and if they're open now and kind of what they focus on?
Sure. Yeah, I believe all of our journals are open at the moment. Most of our journals, if not all, are open year round.
Okay.
Stirring is kind of our flagship journal because it's been around it'll be 22 in October this year. I believe it is the oldest continuously publishing online journal founded by a woman. It's one of the 5 oldest in America that's still publishing. And the focus of Stirring, I don't want to spoil anything. There might be a call coming out soon for a themed issue, but Stirring,
Awesome.
yeah, it's very exciting. But Stirring is kind of, it isn't geared towards a specific type of writer or specific type of writing. It kind of prides itself in being fairly eclectic. It publishes poetry, fiction, nonfiction, as well as art. We have Bee Stung, which is run by Sarah Clark. It is a journal exclusively for non-binary writers. We also have Doubleback Review, which is exclusively for work that has been previously published in a journal that has since gone defunct. A couple of the other journals that we have at the moment are on hiatus. Cahuta Doodling and Pretty Owl Poetry are both on a semi unclear if they're like what the deadlines are for that. I know a lot of things are, post-COVID are in flux.
Sure.
And I think we're starting to see some changes there. We also have Rogue Agent, which explicitly looks for work that is specifically poetry that deals with the body in some way. So those are kind of our literary journals. But we also have other submissions. So we do The Wardrobe, which features poems or prose from recently published collections by women and non-binary writers. And we also obviously do the Best of the Net. So it's a lot of different things that and we're open for submissions for Best of the Net from editors right now too, which is exciting.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. When is the deadline for that?
September 31st.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, yes, I mean, I love all of these journals so much. And just for those who are watching the interview, I've done interviews also on my website with all of these. So if you want to know more about any of the ones she mentioned, Stirring, Rogue Agent, even the ones that are on hiatus, but Bee Stung also has been interviewed on my website. So all of them, you can find more information about these there. Most of them are open year round, like you mentioned. And yes, we're seeing a lot of reimagining due to COVID, people saying, oh, maybe now is where I take the time to determine what's next steps. Do I need to pivot? What fits for my new normal? So, I think it's a great time for journalists to reimagine themselves or decide to become something else if that's what is going to best suit their staff. So That's awesome. Yeah. Um, Specifically, Double Back is
Mhm.
just very intriguing. And I love to see, that's the great thing about what Sundress does is that everything that it puts together is really to support writers and poets in a specific way. Not well, maybe not everything, but pretty much. There is, kind of a specific mission, like we were talking about before, for each of those separate projects. So double back books and double back review is particularly interesting because, as you mentioned, they publish out of press books and writings that were previously published and now are out of print or in, journals have gone defunct. So I'm curious about what specifically inspired that particular press and journal.
Yeah, double. Well, both of them were kind of came out of conversations that were had about, there seemed to be like a rash of small presses that all seemed to, have to close doors for any number of reasons, and all legitimate. That like it's
Sure.
running a small press is a labor of love. The joke that I've always heard is, how do you make a small fortune and independent publishing? Start with a large fortune. You know
Right.
there's not a lot to and it's it takes up an enormous amount of time, and so a lot of small presses, really really wonderful ones, just didn't have the time, the energy, the money to maintain. And we hated the fact that like those books disappeared when those presses went dark. And so we had the Gone Dark archives, which we had started years ago, which was basically, it's we're using our free hosting site to host old journals that didn't want to have to continue paying, but we didn't want the journals to necessarily go away. So we started that as a way to keep online literary journals from disappearing. But but we still kept getting kind of questions like, hey, I published this work somewhere and it doesn't exist anymore. Can I send it to your journal, or can I send it to your press? And so we had to like have those conversations in terms of like, will we allow that? Is that something that we're open to? How do the rights work within these sorts of things? And so those kind of conversations led to us realizing that there was definitely a space that needed to exist for this work that had kind of gotten lost to any number of outside elements. And so Doubleback Press started first, and we decided that we were we weren't going to reprint because we did a couple reprints in with Sundress, both on the e-chap side but also in the print side. And we just found that like the sales like in reprints were difficult, and but we wanted like the work to still be there. And what we did find was that when we were doing reprints on e-chaps, the downloads on that were in like the thousands. So yeah, so like all of our e-chaps get on anywhere between 500 and 2,000 downloads a year, which is
Wow.
a bestseller for a print book. So, and they get utilized a lot in classrooms because they are free, because they students have access to them, and especially for those who are trying to keep the amount that students have to pay down on books, like it's a really great resource. So those so we went back and forth and decided that because we would get much more readership, which is the point, we were going to move with e-publishing for that. And some people are that's not the that's not what they're looking for. They're looking to have something
Right.
to hold in the hand, and I totally respect and understand that. But one of the things that I've really been appreciative of is just exactly how much readership. So I mean, a lot of independent presses don't sell 500 or 1,000 copies of the book, and now that book has been able to be virtually put into that many more hands. And then Doubleback Review kind of stemmed from that. So the kind of the same idea, of being a place where we could publish work that had gone into journals that had gone out of print, or had gone dark entirely and their websites had disappeared, because that work then just utterly disappears in the void. So, and a big shout out to Meta Sims, who runs is managing editor at Doubleback Press, and Krista Cox, who's the managing editor at Doubleback Review. They both do amazing work with their team, and we're actually Doubleback Press is actually open now. This is the 1 month we are open, or they're open for the year. For previously published fiction, poetry, full length or chapbook length fiction, poetry, or nonfiction. So yeah, and Doubleback Review, I believe, is open year round.
Okay, great. That's great to hear. I think all of this is, one of the things that I picked up on from this is that Sundress is consistently, kind of finding those gaps in the literary community and finding ways to fill them. So I guess my next question for you is really, what would you like to see more of in the literary community? And have you identified something that, and you don't have to give it away, but it sounds like there's a pretty consistent cadence for you, for Sundress, and just all these amazing volunteers that you work with to identify those gaps and then find, a really great way to start to fill it. And I'm really hearing similar things from the start of, everyone I've interviewed for this series. So yes, what else would you like to see? And do you have other things in the works? And you, like I said, you don't have to give it away, but.
At the, that is a great question. At the moment, because we have so much that we do, we're honestly trying to kind of rein in a little bit so we can focus a little bit more. One of the thoughts that I had been thinking about in terms of publishing, I was really happy to see that Jane Huffman at Guest House has just started doing, which is republishing work online that only appeared in print before. And that's been something that I've always thought would be a really excellent idea to have that, because that work is more accessible to more people. So that's something I'm really excited to see another journal doing. And at the moment, we don't have any super big ideas. We did add a lot of stuff in the last year to kind of to deal with some of the limitations that COVID had put on publishing. So, we added a workshop series. That's the second Wednesday of every month on Zoom. Those are super great.
They are super great. I have been to one, and it was so good. I wrote 3 poems from that workshop, and it was the first thing I'd done generative in quite a while. So yeah, really, really awesome opportunity with those.
Awesome. Yeah, and we're taking a break this month, but we'll be back in August with Poetry CrossFit, which is our generative writing day. So we meet on Zoom from 2 to 4. We toss out some rules, and then we all write a poem, read, rinse, repeat. So the idea is to write 3 poems in 2 hours. And then we also started Sundress Reads, which is our review series, and that is our amazing intern staff writes reviews of books that have come out in the last year. So yeah, and our online reading series is maintaining online through the end of our Sundress reading series is going to be online through the end of this year, and we'll probably move back to in person in 2022. But our workshop series will be remaining online indefinitely. So we're very excited to be able to continue to bring that forward. So with that in mind, since we've added about 5 new things in the last year, I'm looking forward to adding less in the next year.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I mean, I can see that some of these projects might merge, or, they might scale in different ways. Some things might grow while other things may, fit into other slots. I completely can see how, with so many different things going, that there's going to be some organic fits. So that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned, I think, the majority of your other opportunities that you have for writers to learn and to be inspired to write. Is there anything else that we haven't mentioned so far?
Yeah, well, we are, we're open for residencies for spring of 2022, the Sundress Academy for the Arts. And next year, we've had to take the last 2 years off because obviously because of COVID, but back in 2022, we will be back on our retreat schedule, which means in the summer of 2022, we'll be doing a camping poetry retreat that'll be
Oh,
up
that's
in the
awesome.
woods at Firefly Farm. Super fun. You get to hang out and write poems by the campfire, and it's going to be great. We'll also be doing a trans and non-binary writers retreat, as well as a retreat for survival and healing for sexual assault survivors. So
Oh, that's amazing.
yeah, so 2022, we're excited to be back in person, even more so.
Yes, no, that's all of that sounds incredible. So I think I'm curious for you personally, like what has helped you the most as a writer and a teacher through all of this?
Through
I mean,
through
just
work with Sundress?
everything you've gotten from Sundress, what have you taken from that you've really incorporated into your writing practice and perhaps, what you then pass on to your students as a teacher?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime that you're doing editorial work, it gives you so much to think about within your own writing. Reading manuscripts and editing manuscripts helps me go, oh, this is how I need to organize my own, or this is, what's not, I can't figure out what's not working here in my own work, but then I read this one and I see it in here, and I'm able to kind of like rework through. And I think that's always the joy of editing, and why, I encourage everyone, if you can, to be a reader at some point in time for a literary journal or a press, and any of that sort of work will just make you more aware of your own writing in general. And within the context for my students, a number of my former students work for Sundress in some capacity, or have interned with us. So that's always such a joy to get to continue to work with people like outside of the classroom. But also, I think we spend a lot of time in my class talking about literary citizenship, about giving back to the community, because I think it's honestly, when people always ask me like, what do I do to sell a lot of books? And I was like, be a person who supports other people's books. Like do that work out in the world, and that's going to come back to you. The people who we sell the most copies of at Sundress are the people who are out there writing reviews, tweeting about other people's writing, just being good literary citizens as a whole. And I think, the ways in which, you're creating that kind of, I guess, literary karma is good. And I think important. So yeah, I think like that's something that I think in order to ask someone to care about what you write, you should be willing to care about what somebody else has written. And I think that's something that I'm always constantly kind of trying to make my students proponents of.
That's such a wonderfully way to put all of that. And you're certainly an incredible example of literary citizenship and in all of the work that you've done and everything that you've created and just how committed. I mean, I think that really is an important part of it, is that, when you're doing this type of work, to commit to consistency is what really helps you, grow your network, grow your friendships, and really learn from other poets and writers. And I that it definitely comes back to you, but it comes back to you in surprising and just really beautiful ways that you would never expect. That's been my experience. So I agree that is certainly something that hopefully everyone can find a little time for. And you don't have to do Sundress. You don't even have to do like trishhopkinson.com. You can just do, there are some things, if there's something you really enjoy, you can just, commit to doing that consistently, even if it's just a half hour a week, but something that contributes to the community in some way it will come back to you. And like we've been saying, just in ways you'd not expect. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate how you commented on that. And there were a couple of other things that you said during the interview that I just wanted to call out a little bit for the viewers. And one of the things that you mentioned, several times really, was that, having an online presence and having those, sort of free e-chaps, or, having your work out there in journals that are accessible to all, right? That don't have a paywall, that is really where you can gain quite a bit of readership. And I think it's really important for poets and writers to have a variety of different publications in print, online, things you can hand out. Even a little swag doesn't hurt. But, having an e-chap is where I've experienced the most responses from readership who, send me emails, tell me how great the work was. Potentially you're going to follow me in other ways and support me in other ways. And I definitely encourage everyone to continue or consider, submitting a microchap or an e-chap to some of these publications that are really doing great work. And especially if it's, landed somewhere that's no longer around, or isn't even available online anymore. So really great opportunity. I think those were the main things I wanted to call out. And I think you've just provided like a wealth of information. Sundress is, there are a lot of different things going on there. So it's really great to talk to you about it, because I think it'll help people kind of understand what the different things are, and maybe not be intimidated about going onto the website and just kind of clicking through a few things. Certainly they all have their own web presence as well, which makes it, I think it's very easy to navigate, but there is a lot there to consume. So now they've gotten a really great overview. But tell us, how can we best get updates from Sundress and all the different things that are happening?
Absolutely. You can follow us on social media. We have a presence pretty much everywhere. All of those links are on our website at sundresspublications.com. You can also email us to be added onto our mailing list, and we send out, kind of reminders about our events, as well as kind of a monthly wrap up of all of our different things that are going on here. Yeah, those are our main ways. And I also really want to say thank you for all that you do, Trish. Like, seriously, your resources that you have online, I know are such a gift. And I appreciate you deeply. So thank you. And I also want to give a little quick shout out, because I always feel like I'm standing in as like the talking head for a team of people who do so much work and give so much back. So please, check out the work from those from our authors, our editorial board, our intern staff. They're doing amazing stuff too.
Oh, that's great. I really appreciate you mentioning all of that. And certainly, as we've already said, our contributions to this really come back to us in spades. And it's it's one of the reasons why I think Selfish Poet is an appropriate name for myself. So, but Erin, it's always such a pleasure. And I'm so looking forward to seeing you in person sometime soon. I hope in 2022. And thank you for taking some time here with me for this Telltale Poetry series. And I hope you have a beautiful weekend.
Thank you.
We will talk soon.
Thank you again. Thanks all.
Thank you.